Okay guys, welcome back to episode 2 of our Asteroids game. Today we're going to be starting to work on the movement of the player, as well as maybe if we have enough time we're going to start working on actually making the player shoot bullets. In the first episode we went on and created the project, and then we also added in our colliders to the edge of the screen so that over time when we get the game more developed the player is not going to go off the screen, off the scene. What else did we do? We also added in the actual player into the scene, but we haven't actually made it do anything, so that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. So let us jump straight into here and have a look at the plan for today. So today's plan is going to be based on the movement. We're going to start working on that first, and then if we have time we'll move on to the shooting mechanics. That is quite long, so we'll see how this episode goes, but for now let's start working on the movement. So let me just put this over here so I can keep track of what we're doing. So what's first? Okay, so we're going to start working on the movement of the player. So to do that we need to first make a script for our player. So let's click on our player and then we'll open up our prefab so we can add it onto our player prefab. So we'll add in a new script called player. New script, we'll create and add that onto our player prefab. Then we'll go and edit this script. So that's going to open up our script now. So what we're going to do is we're going to check in the update method if any of our input is changing. So if we press the up arrow, the down arrow, or even the S and W and S arrows, not arrows, keys on the keyboard, we're going to go ahead and update a certain value in our script. So to do that, let us go and check for any update on these values. So we're going to get rid of our start method for now, and in our update method here we want to go and say if this is where we're going to check if any update has happened to the game. So if we're pressing down on any of the up arrow keys, or even these, the W key. So to do that, let's go and say if input dot get key with a key code dot W. So if we press the W key, but we can also use the up arrow, so we're also going to say if we press the W key or we press the up arrow. Let's go and do that now. So input dot get key dot this is bracket key code dot up. I think it's up arrow. Yeah, so up arrow. Okay, so if we press the W key or the up arrow, we're going to go and do whatever is in here. So this is where we're going to go and update a value of that we create, and that is going to be called the the thrusting value. So let's go ahead and create that here. So this is going to be a float. So let's go ahead and create. We'll make this public. What should we? Yeah, we'll make it public for now so we can see it in the inspector. So public float thrusting. Can I spell thrusting? Yeah, so public float thrusting, and that's it. We're just gonna. No, sorry, I made a mistake here. So this is going to be a boolean. So if we are thrusting, we're gonna set this as equal to true. So we can do this in two ways. We can either go and say, where'd it go? Thrusting is equal to true, like that. Or to make it even shorter, we can go ahead and delete this and we can put here thrusting is equal to that line of code. Come on computer, catch up. Okay, so if we press any of these values or these keys, we're going to go ahead and set thrusting is equal to true. So that's how we're going to check if we're pressing the up arrow or the W key. The next thing we want to do is, let's just see what's in the list. So thrust. Okay, so we want to work on the turn direction. So let us go and create our turn direction. So we're going to do the same thing, but instead of a boolean, it's going to be a float this time. So I got them mixed up. So here we'll say public float. What is it going to be? Turn direction. Like that. That we're not going to set to any value. We're going to set that to some value in here. So now this is going to be a bit confusing. So basically because we have to make these the opposite. So instead of when you press the when you press the left arrow, the player object, the player object is not going to go to the left. Instead, it's going to kind of like push off from the left and go right, if that makes sense. So it's going to thrust from left to right whenever you press the left key, and the opposite whenever you press the right key is going to thrust from right to left. So to do that, we have to do the only thing we have to do is make it a negative, or just make it the opposite. So instead of left being negative, it's going to be positive, and instead of right being positive, it's going to be negative. So let's go and do that. So first of all, before we even start making or changing our values, we need to check and see if we are pressing either the A key, the D key, or the left and right arrows. So let's go and check. So for this, we're going to say if if input dot get, I think it's get key key code dot A, or we also need to get the left arrow key. So left and A go together, and right and D go together. So if we press the A key, or we press the left arrow, so input dot get key code dot left arrow, like that. So if we do that, we want to set our turn direction to a positive value. So for that, we're going to say turn direction is equal to 1.0 rather, because it's a float, it's got a decimal. And then what we're going to do is we're also going to say else if the same thing. So we'll copy this, paste that in there, and instead of having the A arrow, the A key will say D key, and instead of the left arrow, we'll make it the right arrow. So here we're going to do the opposite. Instead of having it go from left to right, it's going to go from right to left, so we're going to make it negative. So here we want to say turn direction is equal to minus 1.0 f. Don't forget the f, otherwise you'll get an error. And then if we don't have any movement in our spaceship or player, whatever you want to call it, we want to go and set this to 0. So we want the player just to be an idle. So here, obviously, we're just going to set this is equal to 0. So we'll say else, open bracket, turn direction is equal to 0, just like that. So we'll say 0.0 just to be consistent with all these three values. So that's fine. And then what we also want to do is we want to say, or actually no, I think that's it for this one. So let's see what's next on the list. So we can check for input and update thrusting, W and up arrows. I'm just taking off the what are they called, the checkpoints that I made on our list. So we've done the turn left, done turn right, and turn 0. Okay, that's perfect. So now we want to get a reference to our rigid body that is currently on our player object. So let's go and check if we have a rigid body on there, but we don't. So we're going to add one. So let's go and say rigid body 2D, because obviously this is a 2D game. So I'll leave that on there. We shall save that, and then we'll jump back into our game. Let's just swap these around because I prefer the script being on the right. So over here we want to, where is it? So we need a reference to our rigid body. So in here we are going to say, I think it's going to be public rigid body. Or actually, also we'll make this private because we don't really need it in the script. However, you can drag and drop it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do it in the awake method. So let's go and say private. There we go, private rigid body 2D. This one is called rigid body, like that. And then at the start of the game, when the game wakes up, or whatever we want to call it, we want to go and set this rigid body reference to the rigid body that's attached to the script. So let us go and say private, or let's go and say awake, because then it'll complete it for us. So we'll bring in our awake method, and then in here we will go and say rigid body and get the rigid body that we just created, and we'll set that equal to get component, and we'll look for a rigid body 2D component on the script, or it's going to look for a rigid body 2D object that's on the game object that the script is attached to. So we'll close that off with rounded brackets and a semicolon, like that. So now that's going to assign the rigid body on this game object to our rigid body reference here. So that looks fine, like that. So that's all good. So now we want to go and make this actually move. So to do that, we want to go and add force to this. So we want to, instead of doing this in the update method, because our update method is called every frame, and depending on your frame rate of the game, that's going to vary from time to time. So we're going to do this in a fixed update method, which is called on a fixed interval, so it should be consistent throughout the game. So let's get our fixed update, or fixed join. Let's get our fixed update method in here. Fixed update, like that. So in here we want to go ahead and add in our force to our our rigid body. So we can go and say, if we are thrusting, so where is it, thrusting. So if we are thrusting, we want to make our player, or the spaceship, or whatever you call it, the little triangle guy, this guy, go up, or up or forward, whichever one you want it. In the 2D game it's going to be up. So here we'll go and say rigid body, not that, so we need the lowercase one, rigid body, oh we forgot the underscore, so rigid body is equal to, rigid body dot add force, and then here we want to do this dot where is it, transform, there it is, transform dot up. So this is going to be going in an up direction, and then we also want to times this by a speed that we're going to create. So let's go and create that now. So here we can go public, we'll make this public so we can edit it in the inspector till we get a value that we think is good. So public, we'll make this a float, and we'll call it speed. For now we'll set that, we'll set that is to equal about 1 for now, so we'll go 1.0 f, and then all we have to do here is times our this dot transform dot up by our speed. So that's going to give us some thrust going up. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to make our player rotate. So to do that, we are going to say if the turn direction is not equal to 0.0 f, so if there is a value in it that's not equal to 0, that means we are turning. So we want to go and say add this turn direction to our player. So instead of using add force, we are going to go and say underscore rigid body dot add torque, and then here we want to get our turn direction. So where is it? Do we make it? Yeah, we did turn direction. And then the same thing, we want to times this by speed as well, but we're going to make a different speed, so we're going to copy that and paste that. And for our thrusting speed, we're going to change the name from just speed to thrusting. So that's going to be thrusting speed, and then this is we're going to turn it. We're going to turn it to turn speed like that. So they're both going to have a value of 1 for now. We'll change it later on. We'll need to update that, so we'll copy that, paste that in there, and then we'll copy our turn speed and times our torque turn direction by our turn speed. So we'll save that, and then hopefully we can jump into our game and see our player actually move on our input commands. So let's go and press play, and hopefully this will work first time round. We might have a bit of a problem with, I think our player will, yeah, so it's going to fall off the scene, which we actually need to add in a collider here. So let's go and add in a, oh actually let's go back to our game hierarchy and see, do we have, okay, so we do have our what's called our colliders there. So let us add in a collider onto, can we edit this? No, we can't. Okay, so we'll leave that off for now, but instead of having a gravity scale of 1, we're going to set that equal to 0 so that our player doesn't actually fall out of the scene. So if we play the game now, we should be able to control our player without our player falling out the scene. So here you can see that we can actually control our player, and it's kind of, we need to change some of the values because look, as you can see it's gone off the scene. So let's go and change some of these values. So I've written some of them down here to try and speed this up. So we're going to change our mass of our rigid body on our player to half of what it is, so going from 1 to 0.5. Our linear drag we will set to 1 because we don't want our player to just continuously travel. It needs to have some sort of drag to slow it down. Angular drag we will set to the same thing, we'll set that to 1, and gravity scale we already changed to 0. And then we also need to add in some constraints. No we don't, sorry, we need to add in constraints to our bullet, so we'll leave that for now. So we'll save that, and then our turn, well on our player here we want to go ahead and change our speed. So we want to change our speed from our turn speed to, why can't I select it? Okay, anyway, so we'll try from 1 to 0.1, and then we're going to leave our thrusting speed at 1 for now. We'll save that, and then we'll jump back into our game and press play and see what that looks like. So let's click on our player here. I just want to see if whenever we start moving, this checkbox here should tick. So there we go, so that's good. Okay, so our turn speed is quite very low, so let's go and make that equal to, we'll put that back to 1 so we can turn, which feels a lot better, but it's still quite heavy, so let's make that 2 maybe. Oh. Okay, so that looks better and it feels a lot better. Maybe we could probably go higher maybe. Let's make that 3 and see what that's like. Okay, I think I like that a lot better. So that's gonna work for our turn speed. We'll set that equal to 3. We'll leave our thrusting speed at 1, and then I think all the values should stay the same. So that we just need to remember that. So it's 1, 3, and 0. Cool. So because when we go back into this, it's gonna reset. So let's go and set that back to 1, 3, and 0 like that. I think those are all fine. Mass is at 0.5, like I said. Drag the 2 drags at 1 and our gravity scale at 0, because obviously we do not want our our player to fall off the screen. But for now I'm just going to go and add in a box collider to our player here. So let's open up our player, so there it is. So now let's just go and test and see if our if we go like far enough up that we do not go off the scene. So I'm gonna let go, and okay, so that's good. So here, okay, so I need to fix that. So let's see. So that is happening because we've just collided with our like restrictions at the very top of the screen, which is our box collider. Okay. Yeah, okay, so I think that's actually our turn speed. So this we're going to set back to 1. And then we'll play the game again, and hopefully that will be different. We might have to put it back to 0.1. So let's try this again. How fast do we turn? Okay, so we do see how things vary between like, different game times, or whatever you call it. So at the start, when we set this to 0.1, it wasn't really working properly, it was way too slow. So now that we set it to 3, well, in the first time when we played it, it looked really good. But now obviously 3 is way too fast, and so is 1. So let's go ahead and try 0.1. So that this 0.1 is basically acting as the 3 that we had before, which is what we wanted. So let's check our colliders. We can collide into that box there and nothing happens. We can collide into the side ones, which should be fine. Cool. We actually need to move that off of the screen so that we can kind of make it to the edge of the screens, or the screen, because there's only one screen. Same as that, we need to move it slightly off screen. And then the left one, we probably also need to move off the screen. Yeah, that's good. Cool. So let's go and change that quick. So we will double click that again. So let's see here. Okay, so we will move our colliders. So we want the left one, or the right one now. Let's move that off the screen to about there. Same with the left one, we will move it more to the left to about there. The top one is fine, but we need to make this a bit longer. So let's say, how do you edit it? There we go. So we'll drag this out like that, drag this out like that, and let's just overlap it a little bit like that. And then for the last one, we're going to do the same thing, stretch it out over the screen so it intersects, well, overlaps the other one, the 2 on the left and the right. So now let's play the game again and see what happens when we go far off to the left or the right of the screen. So we can thrust all the way to the side of the screen. Hopefully we reach the end of the screen, so that's perfect, that's what we want. We also want the bottom to be at the bottom of the screen, so that's fine. Cool. So we are going to have a bit of a problem with this, because at the moment on our player we have actually got a square collider, which is not really going to work properly because it's going to collide with this part instead of just the triangle bit. So we'll fix that probably later on in the what's it called, in the I can't think, in the series. So let's see what's next. So we started working on the player, so that's the player movement, so that's all ticked off. We've got to start working on the shooting mechanics, but we're currently 24 minutes into the stream, so this will probably be the end of this episode. So yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. So if you enjoyed this episode, or if you're enjoying the series, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I will see you in episode 3, where we will carry on working on the shooting mechanics, allowing the player to shoot at asteroids that we will eventually add into the game. What else are we going to do? We are going to do nothing. That's it. So next episode we're going to be working on the shooting mechanics and allowing for creating a bullet prefab. So if that's something you're interested in, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so you're notified when that episode comes out, which should be on Wednesday, hopefully. But yeah, that's it for this episode, so thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
But I see the light from far away, it's down the line. Maybe I should not give up without a fight, 'cause there will be a time